Hey, coworkers.
Welcome to Coworkers in Crime, the podcast where office chatter meets crime discussion.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Crystal.
Yes, we really do work together.
And yes, we're totally obsessed with true crime.
From water cooler whispers to cold case deep dives,
we're here to bring you stories that keep us chatting way past our coffee breaks.
So grab your coffee,
lock your desk drawer, and let's get into this week's case.
There's a stretch of road in northern British Columbia that carries more than traffic. It carries grief, it carries unanswered questions, and it carries the weight of decades of families searching for their loved ones. In this episode, we're going to return to the Highway of Tears, but not to the cases you've already heard. We're going to focus on the ones that rarely make headlines, the ones that didn't get national coverage, the ones whose families are still waiting for justice or even just acknowledgement, because sometimes the most important stories are the ones almost no one talks about.
And what makes these cases especially important is that they expand the Highway of Tears narrative beyond the familiar. We're looking at boys and men, early cases before the crisis had a name, and families who fought for answers long after the media moved on. These stories matter, and they deserve space.
First case is from 2018, one that challenges the stereotype of who the Highway of Tears victims are. Colton Fleury. Colton Fleury was 16 years old when he disappeared from Prince George in May of 2018. APTN Investigates later identified him as one of 19 Indigenous boys and men missing or murdered along Highway 16, a demographic almost entirely absent from the mainstream coverage. Colton had been staying at a motel. Surveillance footage shows him walking away alone early in the morning. That's the last confirmed sighting. His mother's story is one of the most heartbreaking parts of this case. She had been working to get sober, to rebuild her life, and to regain custody of her son. She told APTN that she was finally ready, finally stable, and then Colton vanished. There were searches, posters, community efforts, but the coverage was minimal, and the narrative around missing Indigenous youth often defaults to stereotypes that overshadow the real story, a family trying desperately to find their child.
What really stands out to me the most in his story is how little national attention it received, especially compared to some of the others along the corridor, which is still not enough. But, I mean, I didn't hear about these cases until you, but I think my algorithm is like, oh, let's bring you a little bit. So I do get to see things here and there, but it's not about any cases really surrounding men. It's always about the women, really.
And it raises a bigger question, and one we've talked about. Why do some cases get amplified while others, they're barely mentioned and they're swept under the rug?
Yeah, I mean, imagine what silence does to those families who are already grieving and they are thinking no one cares my loved one's missing.
And I think it raises the narrative even more when it's Indigenous boys and men. So how do we shift the narrative so that that group isn't invisible when talking about the Highway of Tears or really any case of missing Indigenous people?
Yeah, I think we just disturb the algorithm, make it pop up. Talking about it will definitely bring that to the front. And imagine what that justice starts to look like for those families when awareness starts to spread that way and the disappearances start to be heard.
Right. It's, one of the reasons we wanted to start the podcast was to give those stories the time and space that they so desperately deserved.
And it's tough because I think that as we gather more people that listen, they get to hear stories that don't hit the mainstream. And I think we do Water Cooler Whispers because so much is happening. And it really gets us to look at how history repeats itself. Our podcast has become so many different things just naturally, like the history of episodes and the things that we've done with old cases and bringing them back up and things that were barely heard, but paralleling them and putting them up against cases that we do hear a lot about and just really getting an eye-opening experience of this was almost a super similar case and it got nothing. I think that's such a big deal when it comes to the scalability of these stories being heard. To understand the roots of the crisis, we need to go back before the Highway of Tears had a name and before the public understood the scale. Alberta Williams in 1989 was a 24-year-old who was murdered And her case is one of the earliest linked cases in the Highway of Tears corridor. CBC had covered her story in investigative reporting, but outside of that, she's rarely discussed. And that's significant because her murder predates the public recognition of the crisis by more than a decade. Her death occurred during a time when Indigenous women's disappearances were often dismissed, minimized, or mischaracterized. Families reported concerns, but systemic issues and jurisdictional confusions, like we've talked about in past episodes, meant investigations were inconsistent at best.
And Alberta's case shows that the Highway of Tears didn't suddenly begin in the early 2000s. Communities had been sounding the alarm long before anyone listened.
And it makes you wonder how many cases were never connected because they weren't documented or acknowledged along that stretch.
Right, because we're saying that Alberta's case is 1989. It's a decade before they're recognizing the Highway of Tears. So how many other cases between 1989 and 1999 do we have that are not reported or not tied to this Highway of Tears? Now, we add more names to the Highway of Tears by doing that, and maybe that's the right way to go. But I think we said on the very first episode, only one of these cases has ever been solved, and there's 80
still
or something?
Jarring. Yeah, it's still jarring. And that we could keep having these cases for the next 5 years and not get through them. Right. Because there's just so many of them.
And like we said in those earlier episodes, we will continue covering them. So if you haven't listened, go back and listen to those. We've done 2 other episodes on the Highway of Tears to go over some of the names that are linked to that stretch of highway in Canada. So what does it mean when a crisis exists long before the public recognizes it?
I think that seems to me like lack of publicity. I mean, those families are obviously carrying that grief alone because someone hasn't seen a pattern. But if we're all talking about it, when something's publicized and we're saying, yeah, I'm always noticing this has happened. 2 of my friends lost someone on this stretch of highway and it's very bizarre. Then maybe it's like, oh, well, you know what? Like, my cousin that lives 4 towns over, same thing. I just feel like conversation and talking, and obviously we didn't have a way to communicate as easily then, but we have it now. And I think that's, again, bringing it back up is going to be such a big deal because these families are carrying this grief by themselves. There's still no answers. 80 cases, 1 solved. That's crazy. Someone knows
that's
something.
A lot.
It's a whole lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of other places where multiple people go missing. There's in Texas, right? There's the killing fields.
The killing
fields.
Not
to that number.
Mm-mm.
But still,
but again, people not talking enough to make the connection. Yeah.
And we have to remember, we have to remember 1989 and really before, I would say, like mid 90s, early 2000s, talking about true crime wasn't a thing. If you said you followed true crime stuff, people would look at you like you had, 2 heads and needed to go see a therapist.
Which may not be wrong, but not because I like true crime.
Right. But it's such a different time. And I always have to try and remind myself, especially when we're talking about investigations and things that are happening in a different time than we currently live in. It was different. There wasn't 24/7 media coverage. There weren't doorbell cams everywhere. There weren't dashboard cameras on cars. So you're missing some things today that we have today that we didn't have even 10 years ago that help solve crimes now, but we didn't have it. So I always try to remind myself, I have to look at it from 1989's perspective versus 2026.
I don't know why, because most of the time I feel I am a pretty glass half full kind of person, but I'm more pessimistic when it comes to looking at these types of things because I don't think that crime has sped up or slowed down as far as these types of crimes and violent crime. But even then, the public may not have been able to talk about it. But these systems knew what was going on. They knew they kept losing people in whatever area, right? But it's the lack of transparency and the bureaucracy around it. Because if you think about like all the disappearances where Gabby Petito went missing, they don't want people not coming there, which I can understand, but it's not fair to not disclose what's happening when people's loved ones go missing because we're afraid kids aren't going to choose that college anymore because 4 students were taken out, and they weren't doing anything wrong. They were in their beds. They walked in pairs. Like when you follow the norm and something terrible still happens and no one's really disclosing it, I don't know. It's kind of crazy that there's so much more behind it because I understand what you're saying. It's different now, but there were still things that could have been disclosed then, and they should have had jurisdictional connection.
So let's move into the mid-1990s. This is a period marked by multiple disappearances along Highway 16. Roxanne Thierra was 15 years old when she disappeared in 1994. Her remains were found near Burns Lake. She's one of the officially recognized RCMP Highway of Tears victims, yet her case receives far less coverage than the others from the same era. This was a time when there was no public transit along Highway 16. Hitchhiking wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. And that reality shaped the vulnerability of Indigenous youth in the region.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever shake how that hitchhiking was just was just the way for so long. Just the lack of transportation and the distance between the two places, the isolation. And that's one of the main veins of similarity between the cases. I don't think I'll ever get over that. I just can't imagine my daughter at 15 just, yeah, Mom, I'm going to just go hitch a ride with a stranger and me being like, oh, yeah, okay, grab some milk. Like, I can't imagine that just being so normal, but it is very normal.
But we do it.
Yeah.
We do it today.
Yeah.
With ride shares, we just pay people.
But it's still trackable. Like my location shares. It's not just me jumping in a random car and not being able to disclose anything about the person I'm with. At least there's a name and then the company has a background on them. There's nothing. I could jump in the car with anybody and just say, hey, take me to the airport.
Yeah.
That's crazy. At least we have some trackability.
And those systemic issues weren't addressed for years. Families kept asking for safer options and nothing changed.
How different would the timeline look for the Highway of Tears if reliable transit existed in the earlier decades? Think we'd have like 40 cases instead? Or?
I think we'd have a whole lot less cases.
Yeah.
I think you would have reliable transportation where people aren't getting into the car with the stranger without knowing who they are and hoping for the best. I mean, obviously, that's how a lot of people traveled on this road. So there's a lot of good people who just provided rides, but you get that small percentage of people who are nefarious and maybe they drove up and down this road.
Yeah.
Just waiting
you drop a
for
train
the right
track
person.
across there and what changes?
Right. What responsibility does a government have when infrastructure failures directly contribute to vulnerability?
Yeah. I wonder if there's any sort of penalty. If what they make were directly connected to their responses, I don't know. Like, I don't mind paying taxes, but if my taxes aren't keeping me safe by giving me better roads or better reliable transportation, because even like roads can be a problem. When a road has potholes, it doesn't matter how much work I've done in my car, my tires are going to keep having issues. So if they're not, that's on a very small scale. But if you're seeing that this stretch of highway is dangerous for 15-year-olds and people are having to rely on strangers to take them somewhere and you're losing your communities, I think I would see some urgency in saying, what was it that we heard from our boss about Switzerland needing a train track? And they were just, maybe it was Lego Man, who was like, Switzerland needed a train system, and they were like, okay, we're going to tax everyone this flat amount, and they did it, and they had the train system they needed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you told like each person, your family is going to get taxed $1,000, and at the end of this, we're going to have a train, I think they would do it.
Or even buses or some mode of transportation that doesn't require you sticking your thumb out and hoping for the best.
Right. Our final case is one that families have fought to keep in the public eye for more than 25 years. Ramona Wilson, in 1994, 16 years old, disappears near Smithers. Her remains are found over a year later. Her family has been one of the most vocal in advocating for justice. They have vigils, they've spoken publicly, they've worked tirelessly to keep her memory alive, yet despite their efforts, Ramona's case is under discussed, and compared to the others from the same period, really silent, just much quieter. Her story highlights the emotional endurance families have to carry, not just for months, for decades.
And Ramona's family has shown incredible strength. Their advocacy is part of why her case is still remembered today.
Makes you think about all the families who don't have platforms or support, and their loved ones just are a silent ache. I mean, that they just feel forever.
And that's got to be painful, trying to keep your loved one's memory alive, trying to keep them in the forefront of people's minds so that their cases can be solved.
You don't grieve properly when that happens. You never finish grieving. It's an endless grief because you don't have the answers, and you're trying to get people to listen so you can grieve properly, so you can have those answers, to have some closure. What a chase. You're just chasing and chasing and chasing. Ugh. I get this gross feeling in my mouth when I think about those things. Every once in a while, I just have to bleh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine carrying that emotional weight of an unsolved case and just trying to constantly fight for your loved one. So what does long-term advocacy do to a family's emotional health when answers never come?
Yeah. I imagine what it does to their bodies. The physical manifestations that come from the emotional burdens that people carry is real. I mean, that is very, very real. I mean, and communities around them that try to sustain hope when the system continues to fail them is a whole other domino in that. They've got to sustain that, oh, we live in a great place, but they keep seeing a system that's not changing, and it feels like insanity.
And that's probably a great way to visualize it as a domino effect. Just keep knocking them over. You push one over, and then the rest of them just fall. So until that one gets pulled to stop the pieces from falling,
yeah,
we're not going to see change.
Yeah, I think maybe public transit's a good domino to remove so that we can get less to fall.
These 4 cases, Colton, Alberta, Roxanne, and Ramona, remind us that the Highway of Tears is not a single moment in time. It's a decades-long pattern shaped by systemic failures, infrastructure gaps, and unequal media attention.
And they remind us that every case, no matter how underreported, represents a person that was loved, a family that is grieving, and a community that is waiting.
So if you take anything from this episode, let it be this. Awareness is not enough. These families deserve answers, accountability, and visibility.
And we're going to continue to tell their stories because silence is part of that problem. That's a domino we can remove, Rachel.
Yes, we'll remove, hopefully, the domino of silence. And that can help start the process of healing for these families, for these cases.
Yeah, it is cold cases are always going to be one of those things. Like, when you think about infinity, and you're like, it doesn't end, and you just keep trying to find the end of infinity, and it doesn't. I don't know, numbers being endless, there's some things that my mind just gets hung up on, and I understand the concept, but I just get stuck. And cold cases, I have the same feeling about. No answers, like nothing. We have nothing. How can we have nothing? How can we have 80 people that have one solve? That is very weird and almost intentional at this point. I don't think it is, but there's a lot of intent that happens when you're choosing to perpetuate a problem. You're right? Like there's culpability, there's negligence. It's negligence. I don't know. It's a very frustrating problem, and that's why I think we keep coming back to the Highway of Tears. We talk about devastating stuff in all these cases that need closure and all these cold cases, but this one feels so so solvable, like at least preventable in some of them. We could prevent some of this. Very frustrating.
Right. And I think there's more public transportation now, so people aren't hitchhiking as much. And we're talking about them. Other people, I hope, will start talking about them. And I feel like every case is solvable.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's ever that perfect crime that you're not going to be able to solve it. It just takes the right person looking at it the right way and seeing something that other people didn't.
I want to adopt that. I like that thought. Don't know that I've felt that way, but I
think
see
that's
what you
the
mean.
only
If
way
the
I
right
can get
person,
through.
Yeah.
Right. The only way I can get through true crime is that just the right person has to see it.
I'll say, like, I think the fascination with true crime that you mentioned before is it's not, and it always has like an undertone of what you like to do what. But I will say one of the biggest pieces of it is hearing how people see the same story so different. I'm blown away at the way people see things, and I'm like, I did not think of that. I would have never thought of that. So that means the quieter we are, the less input we have for a solve. Someone's got an answer, right? Even if it's not the answer to what happened, an answer to prevent it from happening again. I just think talking about it can't be the wrong thing. It's just not.
Right. So we're going to keep talking. We're going to keep telling these stories 3, 4 at a time. So yeah, we've got several more episodes coming up of this. It'll be a continual thread woven throughout our episodes because silence is a big part of the problem. So if you want to learn more about the Highway of Tears, we will include our links in our show notes and in our social handles. And until next time, coworkers.
Thanks for listening, coworkers. That wraps up this week's episode.
Thanks for listening, whether you're at your office, at your home, or somewhere in between. We're glad you're here.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Like what you heard, leave us a review and share it with your coworkers.
Got a case you want us to cover or office drama that feels criminal? Send it to us at coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com or check the episode notes for all of our social handles. Until next time, coworkers.
Stay curious, stay safe, and stay caffeinated.